All right, welcome to today's daily vlog. This is the first one of the week, and today I'm going to talk about kind of deciphering, roots behind injuries and kind of the process that you should go through when realizing that you have an injury with somebody, then kind of like what the thought process is on how you should go about like handling it, figuring out what the cause was, manipulating your training and etc. So basically this stemmed today because injuries happen with everybody, and you as a strength conditioning coach or part of a strength conditioning staff, you try to do everything you can to limit the potential for injury. Like that's, and at the end of the day, like some training, through strength training and high-speed sprint training and all this stuff, it is to make the body more resilient so that it's more resistant to injury, right? That's like one of the main goals of things we're trying to accomplish. But things happen, you know what I mean? Two examples of injuries that I'll go over is one, we have a guy who, there's a guy who, right, Friday night or whatever, today's Monday, Friday night, dude's playing basketball for an event, and next thing you know, takes a shot off his back foot, lands down, hurts his knee. Like, you know what I mean? And can you do anything about that within your training scheme? Like, you know what I mean? Does that directly related to what you do as far as like training, manipulation, volume, intensities, exercise, blah blah blah? Minimally, you know what I mean? The only thing that on an injury type of that you can kind of handle is stressing the idea behind like, hey, like if you're in training, like you need to be smart about what you're doing outside of training. And hey, like it's Friday, it's the end of the week, and we're trying to take advantage of this recovery, and you going and playing basketball might not be the best idea, like, you know what I mean? Or trying to say, hey, like maybe you limit this, but at the end of the day, that might be just a freak accident. Like, you know what I mean? It's one of those freak things that happens, and then what you got to do is you got to get the right treatment. You send that athlete off to professionals that can handle that, whether it's the doctor, athletic trainer, they get whatever needs to happen, you send that to the person who's going to get them right. You do that first. Like, you know what I mean? You got to know your scope, got to know what you can handle, what you can't handle. You send that off. And then there's another type of injury. There's one that it's, that happens in training, and you do have kind of you can have an influence on what's going on. So, we had hamstring injury today. Like, you know what I mean? It happened on last sprint of the day, like the last group of the day, like literally the last thing of the day. This athlete's running sprints and tweaks a hammy. So now you got to figure out, okay, like, well, what's going on here? We need to ask some questions to figure out, where this came from, what the situation was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, so you can gather the most information possible to then understand what you need to do to give a better chance where that injury won't occur. Because that hamstring injury, when you're sprinting, there's factors that can be influenced, right? So for the first thing that I usually like to go over is how did it happen, right? Like where did it happen? You know what I mean? In this case, well, I was running, and on the last sprint, just felt a tweak, and that was it. Okay, well, where in the sprint? Was it near the beginning? Was it near the end? Where are you, where were you at? Were you in acceleration, top speed? Oh, well, I was running at top speed. So I was at the last two steps. Okay, so now there's a couple things there. It's all right, well, when you were running this sprint, were you really trying to beat somebody? Were you outreaching yourself? Was your technique flawed? Were you trying to slow down too quickly? Start to figure those things out. Then after you kind of attack the here and now, what kind of happened then you start to work your way backwards. Okay, so you had this injury at 7:45 a.m. and the workout started at 5:45 a.m. right? So what happened before you were doing those sprints, right? This athlete's sprint section, and the whole group of athletes too, right? This whole section was at the end of the workout. Before, they had a lift prior. Before that, they had an acceleration type of station, you know what I mean? It's acceleration type of group. So now you look and it's okay, that's a 2 hour, it's a 2 hour time frame. They're running sprints somewhere at that 90-minute mark. So fatigue. On top of that, it's early AM. Is that ideal? Absolutely not. Are we possibly limiting sleep with recovery? 100%. Logistically, can we do anything about it? Nope. Got to get the work in. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things that, that's a thing that you can't change. And as you start to work back, you see what you can change and what you can't change. So, would sleep potentially be an issue in recovery? Absolutely. Then you start to say, hey, did you get enough sleep this weekend? Did you go out were you drinking this weekend? And those are questions you have to ask, right? Were you out? What'd you do this weekend to take care of yourself? And then you can start to say, okay, well, if you get, I got pretty messed up on Saturday and it's carried over to Sunday. I didn't really get a lot of sleep, stayed up late for the Super Bowl. Okay, well, now we're starting to get a little bit more info about, okay, maybe this was the athlete. It wasn't the setup of our system, okay? But, this athlete, they were on top of their game. They had a pretty good night's sleep. They recovered pretty well. So now it's okay, well, what could we have done to prevent that? We now can kind of say, it wasn't our system, or it wasn't the athlete. The athlete, they moderately handled their business. They had to wake up early. So now we're kind of looking at, okay, they were obviously pretty fatigued by the end of this session. So, what can we do to change that? And thankfully, with a good dialogue between, the coaching staff or the strength and conditioning staff, we have kind of come up with a prevention plan for that. So what happens is we usually rotate groups depending on the day. We had, our Monday was our high speed day and we did it for everybody and we rotate 3 groups. So depending on where you start is where you'll get that high speed sprinting. You know what I mean? So if you start at that group, you got lucky, and then the other 2 groups had to rotate and one group ends, and clearly that was where the injury problem was at the end. So, now that we have this dialogue going, we're starting to decipher this information. We say, okay, well, clearly us doing high speed sprinting at the end of workouts may be a problem. We might be getting too much fatigue and this could be something that leads to other problems. So how do you prevent that? So we're coming up with an organizational scheme that's going to change that so that all of our high speed sprinting is the first thing. You know what I mean? So we're going to have set groups that, you know what I mean? Mondays, hey, you guys are starting here and you do your high-speed sprinting. And then Wednesdays, a different group will start there and they'll do their high-speed sprinting. And Friday, same thing. So now we're just trying to have preventative measures to say, okay, in our system, this could have been an issue. Let's change that. Now, like I said, that's because of the information we were presented with. If we, got back from this kid and, he said, yeah, got this, didn't get a lot of sleep, or, someone in my family died, blah, 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 all these stressors that could have had a problem. Now you need to take a closer look before you go and change things in your system. But at the end of the day, this injury wasn't serious. It's going to take some rehab. We're going to get him back. We're going to do, the right things to get this athlete healthy. And, we got to learn a little bit about our scheme and we got to actually change it for the better. So, injuries aren't always the worst thing, and it's something you got to work through. You got to do it the right way. But it's a great opportunity to learn how to decipher through information. It's a great opportunity to learn, to problem solve, to kind of figure out what things weigh in and what things don't, and how to and how to best optimize your process or your system for your athletes to have the best performance and prevent injury. So that's kind of the process that we went through today. It wasn't just me. Had some other coaches involved in it as well. So it's something that it takes a lot of minds. It takes a lot of eyes. You can't, especially when you're talking about a team strength and conditioning setting, you can't. Not one person can do it. It takes a team. It takes a family. It takes good communication. And that's something that we're blessed to have as a part of the situation I'm in, and it's going to serve our athletes the best, you know what I mean? And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to get these athletes better, not get them hurt, prepare them as best they can for sport play, at the same time and progress in certain things that we feel are key to performance. So that's kind of the talk for today, and ready to get after it this week. Have a good night.